There's a type of person the world misunderstands completely. They walk among you, work beside you, sit across from you at coffee shops, silent, observing, seeing everything. You think they're lonely, antisocial, maybe even broken. You're wrong. According to psychology, there are 5 unmistakable signs that reveal you're standing in front of someone extraordinary, someone who has discovered what most people spend their entire lives running from. First, they spend time alone, not because they hate people, not because they're damaged, but because they've realized something profound. Peace is softer, calmer, and infinitely more honest when they're by themselves. Second, they think deeply about everything: life, death, meaning, pain, beauty, loss. Their minds never stop processing. They are deep thinkers who feel everything with an intensity most people never notice. Third, they understand you faster than you understand yourself. One glance, one sentence, one shift in your energy, and they know. They pick up on subtle details and see connections others miss entirely. Fourth, they don't trust easily, not because they're cold, but because they've witnessed too much hypocrisy, too many promises broken, too many forevers that ended without warning. Fifth, they've endured more than you could imagine: trauma, betrayal, loss. And instead of becoming bitter, they chose kindness. Instead of seeking revenge, they chose silence. Instead of closing their hearts, they kept them open. If you recognize yourself in this description, this message is for you. If you've ever felt like a stranger in a world that never stops talking, this is your story. And it's time you understood. Your solitude isn't loneliness, it's power. The illusion of connection. The world is obsessed with connection, social, constant, performative, a non-stop stream of faces, voices, opinions, demands. We're told that isolation is the enemy, that being alone means something is wrong with us. But what if they've got it backwards? What if the people who choose solitude aren't running away from connection? They're running towards something deeper, something the noise drowns out, something the constant chatter makes impossible. Solitude is for me a fount of healing which makes my life worth living. Talking is often a torment for me, and I need many days of silence to recover from the futility of words. Jung understood. For him, solitude wasn't avoidance, it was restoration. Not escape from reality, but a return to it, to the raw, unfiltered truth beneath the performance. Most people can't handle that truth. They fill every silence with distraction, music, television, scrolling, talking, anything to avoid sitting alone with their own thoughts, because sitting alone means confronting the questions they've been running from. Who am I when no one's watching? What do I actually want beneath the expectations? What am I afraid to admit, even to myself? People who enjoy being alone have stopped running from these questions. They've learned that solitude is voluntary, deliberate, and restorative, marked by calm, comfort, and ease that boosts overall well-being. But here's what the extroverted world doesn't understand. Choosing solitude doesn't mean rejecting people. It means rejecting pretense. It means no longer being willing to wear the mask just to make others comfortable. No longer performing a version of yourself that fits their expectations. No longer sacrificing your inner peace for the illusion of belonging. Because that's what most social interaction is. Illusion. You meet someone. You perform your socially acceptable self. They perform theirs. You both agree to pretend these performances are genuine connection. And you walk away feeling hollow, wondering why intimacy feels so exhausting. People who seek solitude have realized something crucial. It's exhausting because it's fake. Not all of it, not always, but most of the time. Most conversations are scripts, most relationships are transactions, most connections are just two people using each other to avoid being alone. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You start valuing depth over frequency, quality over quantity, one real conversation over 100 shallow ones. You'd rather spend Friday night alone, reading, thinking, creating, than at a party surrounded by people who don't actually know you. This isn't antisocial behavior. Research confirms that intentionally chosen solitude has distinct outcomes from solitude engaged in by default. It's conducive rather than detrimental to psychological health. It's self-preservation, because maintaining the mask is draining, pretending is exhausting, and eventually you realize the only place you don't have to pretend is when you're alone. That's the first sign. They spend time alone not because they dislike others, but because they refuse to keep lying to you, to themselves, to the world. And in a culture that demands constant performance, that refusal looks like pathology. It's not. It's clarity. The world sees someone sitting alone and thinks, lonely. But what they're actually seeing is someone who has discovered something most people never will, that you can only meet someone else as deeply as you've met yourself. And meeting yourself requires silence, space, solitude, the courage to sit with your own mind without distraction. Most people avoid that at all costs, not because they don't have the time, because they're terrified of what they might find. People who enjoy being alone have faced that terror and survived it. They've sat in the silence and heard the voice beneath the noise. They've stared into the mirror without flinching. They've asked the uncomfortable questions and waited for the honest answers. And now they know something the crowd doesn't. True intimacy begins with yourself. Everything else is just noise. The mind that never stops. Watch them. The person sitting alone in the cafe. The one on the park bench, staring at nothing. The colleague who barely speaks in meetings. You think they're zoning out. They're not. What does high sensitivity mean? Above all, it means thinking deeply about everything. Their minds are labyrinths, endless corridors of thought, questions branching into more questions, patterns emerging, dissolving, reforming. Every conversation they've ever had is still alive in there. Every book they've read, every experience that changed them. They remember everything, not just the facts, the feelings, the subtext, the thing you didn't say but wanted to, the micro-expression that betrayed your words, the energy that shifted when the topic changed. Most people process life on the surface. They experience something, react, and move on. But highly sensitive people exhibit heightened activation in brain regions related to empathy and emotion regulation when viewing emotional stimuli. They can't move on, not because they're stuck, because they're processing. Every interaction is data. Every emotion is information. Every mistake is a lesson that needs to be extracted, understood, integrated. This is why they seem quiet in groups, not because they have nothing to say, because they have too much to say, and nowhere near enough time to articulate the depth of what they're thinking. By the time they've formulated a response that captures the nuance they're experiencing, the conversation has moved on, so they stay silent. And everyone assumes they're shy, awkward, disengaged. They're none of those things. They're just operating at a different frequency, like trying to have a meaningful conversation at a rave. The environment isn't designed for depth. It's designed for speed, for surface, for saying something, anything to fill the void. But people who think deeply can't function that way. They need time, space, silence, not to escape thought, but to complete it, to follow the thread all the way to its conclusion, to understand not just what happened, but why it happened, what it means, and how it connects to everything else. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Jung's words hit differently when you understand what looking inside actually requires. It's not a casual glance. It's archaeology. It's excavation. It's digging through layers of conditioning, trauma, fear, and self-deception to find the truth buried beneath. And that work requires solitude. You can't do it in a crowd. You can't do it while performing. You can't do it while maintaining the socially acceptable mask. You can only do it alone, in silence, with nothing but your own mind for company. This is why deep thinkers seek solitude, not to avoid life, to process it, not to escape people, to understand them, including themselves. Research shows that highly sensitive people process stimuli and emotions deeply, which means giving yourself the chance to process all that information you're constantly taking in is essential. But here's the paradox. The more deeply you think, the more isolated you become. Because most people don't think this way. They don't analyze every interaction. They don't lie awake replaying conversations, searching for the hidden meaning. They don't feel the weight of every emotion, theirs and everyone else's. So when you try to share your thoughts, you're met with, "You're overthinking it. Just let it go. Why do you have to make everything so complicated?" And eventually you stop trying to explain. You retreat into the only space where your depth is understood, your own mind. Solitude becomes sanctuary, the place where you don't have to dumb yourself down, where you don't have to pretend that shallow answers satisfy deep questions. where you can think without judgment, feel without explanation, and exist without performance. This is the second sign. They think deeply about everything, not because they enjoy torturing themselves with existential questions, but because their minds are wired to see beyond the surface. To them, every moment contains infinite layers. Every person is a universe. Every experience is a doorway, and they can't stop themselves from walking through, even when it hurts, even when it exhausts them, even when they wish, just for a moment, they could see the world the way everyone else does, simply, easily, without the crushing weight of perpetual awareness. But they can't, so they embrace it in the only place deep enough to contain it: alone. The readers of souls. There's a strange phenomenon that happens when you spend enough time in solitude. You start seeing people differently, not their words, not their actions, not the carefully constructed persona they present to the world. You see beneath it all, one glance, one sentence, sometimes just the way they hold their body, and you know they're lying, you know they're afraid, you know they're hurting, even when they're smiling. You know their intentions before they speak them, their patterns before they repeat them. Highly sensitive people are predisposed to look deeper, think deeper, and feel deeper. Their empathy engages more deeply, and so does their awareness of the experience of another. This is the third sign, and it's the one that makes them most uncomfortable, because understanding people faster than they understand themselves is not a gift. Not entirely. It's also a burden, a curse disguised as insight. Watch what happens. You meet someone new. Within minutes, you've mapped their psychology, their wounds, their defenses, the trauma they're compensating for, the part of themselves they've disowned, the story they tell themselves to make sense of their pain, and they have no idea you see it. They think they're being mysterious, guarded, complicated. They think their walls are strong, their masks are convincing, their performance is flawless. But to someone who reads souls, it's all transparent. Research has validated the highly sensitive person trait, with brain imaging studies showing heightened activation in regions related to empathy when viewing emotional stimuli. This isn't mysticism, it's neurology. Some brains are simply wired to process social information more deeply. They pick up on micro-expressions, vocal patterns, energy shifts, the things most people don't consciously register, but that convey more truth than any words ever could. So they know. They know when you're uncomfortable, even if you're pretending to be fine. They know when you're attracted to them, even if you're acting indifferent. They know when you're lying, even if your story is perfect. They know when you're about to betray them, often before you've consciously decided to do it yourself. And this knowledge destroys intimacy, because how do you connect with someone when you see all their shadow material, when you recognize the manipulation before it's fully formed? When you understand their patterns so clearly, you can predict their behavior. You can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee what you've seen. So you have two choices. 1. Pretend you don't see it. Let them maintain their illusion. Play along with the performance. Accept the shallow connection they're offering because it's better than none. 2. Speak the truth. Tell them what you see. Shatter their self-image. Risk being called crazy, judgmental, or too intense. Most of the time, they choose silence, not because they're afraid, because they're tired. Tired of being the mirror that reflects what people don't want to see. Tired of holding space for wounds people won't acknowledge. Tired of understanding people more deeply than they understand themselves, and being rejected for it. Introverts live in two worlds. We visit the world of people, but solitude and the inner world will always be our home. This captures the essence of those who see deeply. They can interact with the surface world, but their true existence happens in the realm of depth. Because in solitude, they don't have to manage everyone else's discomfort with being seen. They don't have to pretend they don't notice. They don't have to dumb down their perception. They don't have to apologize for understanding too much. They can just be. With all their insight, all their awareness, all their uncomfortable clarity. This is why they're drawn to solitude. Not because they dislike people, but because being around people requires constant editing, constant self-censorship, constant management of what they see and what they're allowed to acknowledge. It's exhausting, so they retreat to the only place where their vision is an asset instead of a liability, where their depth is understood instead of feared. where they don't have to pretend to be blind to truths everyone else is desperately trying to ignore. They see you, all of you, the parts you show, the parts you hide, the parts you've forgotten exist. And if that terrifies you, they already know. The walls around the wounded. Let's talk about trust, or rather, the lack of it, because this is the fourth sign, the one that makes people call them cold, guarded, unavailable. They don't trust easily, and everyone wants to know why. Everyone wants to fix it, to prove they're different, to break through those walls and reach the soft, vulnerable center they're convinced exists underneath. It does exist, but the walls aren't there by accident. They're there because of accumulated evidence. Not paranoia, not damage. Evidence. Evidence that people lie, that promises mean nothing, that forever is a word people use when they mean until something better comes along. Evidence that kindness is often manipulation in disguise, that vulnerability is weaponized, that the deepest truths you share will be used against you the moment the relationship sours. Evidence that most people don't actually want to know you. They want to use you. For validation, for entertainment, for emotional labor, for whatever need they're trying to fill. And once that need is met, or once you stop meeting it, they vanish. No explanation, no closure, just gone. And they wonder why the person who's experienced this repeatedly doesn't immediately trust the next person who shows up promising to be different. Research findings contradict the commonly held narrative that people with higher introversion are specially equipped to handle social restrictions because they want or need less social support. In fact, they were quite sensitive to loneliness and loss of social connection. They're not cold, they're careful. There's a difference. Cold people don't care if you leave. Careful people care too much, which is exactly why they're careful, because every connection that breaks takes a piece of them. Every betrayal leaves a scar. Every person who promised to stay and didn't chips away at their capacity to believe. So yes, they have walls. High, thick, fortified walls built brick by brick from disappointments and betrayals. From people who said, "I love you," and meant, "I love what you do for me." From friends who were only friends when it was convenient. From partners who left the moment things got difficult. And here's what nobody tells you about those walls. They're not meant to keep everyone out forever. They're meant to filter, to separate the people who want something from you from the people who genuinely want to know you, to identify who's performing and who's authentic, to protect the vulnerable core from casual cruelty, because people who enjoy solitude have learned something painful. Most people can't handle your depth. You share your real thoughts, and they call you negative. You express your real feelings, and they tell you you're too sensitive. You reveal your wounds, and they use them as ammunition the moment you disagree. So you stop sharing, not because you've given up on connection, but because you've learned to value it properly. You've learned that real intimacy is rare, that genuine understanding is precious, that trustworthy people are anomalies, not norms. And you'd rather be alone than constantly disappointed by people who claim to want depth but really just wanted the illusion of it. This is why they don't trust easily, not as a pathology, as a strategy, a survival mechanism developed through repeated exposure to people who weren't what they claimed to be, who said all the right words but couldn't back them up with consistent action, who loved the idea of you but couldn't handle the reality. The best political, social, and spiritual work we can do is to withdraw the projection of our shadow onto others. Jung understood that protection of the self isn't weakness, it's wisdom, that discernment isn't judgment, that choosing solitude over shallow connection isn't avoidance, it's self-respect. So when they finally do let someone in, when they lower those carefully constructed walls, when they offer their trust, their vulnerability, their truth, it means something. It means they've seen enough to believe you might be different, that you've demonstrated through consistent action, not empty words, that you can handle what's underneath, that you won't run, won't weaponize, won't leave. And if you break that trust, those walls go back up, higher, thicker, with reinforced foundations, not out of bitterness, out of confirmation, proof that they were right to be careful in the first place. The alchemy of suffering. Now we arrive at the truth that separates them from everyone else. The fifth sign, the most important one. They've suffered, not the ordinary disappointments everyone experiences, not the minor heartbreaks that sting and fade. Real suffering, the kind that breaks people, the kind that leaves most humans bitter, vengeful, closed. Trauma, betrayal, loss, abandonment, pain that rewires your nervous system and changes how you see the world. And they didn't become monsters. That's the miracle. That's what makes them extraordinary. Because suffering doesn't just happen to you, it reveals what's inside you. It's a crucible, a furnace, and what emerges depends entirely on what you're made of. Some people break and never recover. They become addicts, abusers, victims frozen in time. Some people break and become hard, bitter, cruel. They decide if the world hurt them, they'll hurt the world back. But some people break and become soft. Not weak, soft. There's a profound difference. Weak people collapse under pressure. Soft people absorb it. They feel the full weight of the pain. Don't run from it. Don't numb it. Don't displace it onto others. And somehow, impossibly, they choose kindness anyway. This is alchemy, the transformation of suffering into compassion, of pain into purpose, of wounds into wisdom. Despite experiencing stress more deeply, highly sensitive people are more positively affected by interventions than others. They possess a remarkable capacity for transformation. Watch how it works. Someone betrays them. Instead of becoming distrustful of everyone, they become more discerning. They learn to read people better, to recognize red flags earlier, to protect themselves without closing completely. Someone abandons them. Instead of abandoning others preemptively, they learn the difference between solitude and loneliness. They stop seeking validation from people who can't give it. They become whole within themselves. Someone hurts them. Instead of hurting others, they develop empathy for the wounded. They recognize that hurt people. They choose to break the cycle instead of perpetuating it. This is not weakness. This is strength beyond measure, because revenge would be easy. Bitterness would be justified. Closing their hearts would be understandable. No one would blame them for becoming cold, guarded, cruel after what they've endured. But they chose differently. They chose to let the pain refine them instead of define them, to let suffering be a teacher instead of a prison, to extract meaning from meaningless cruelty. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The people who enjoy solitude have made their darkness conscious. They've sat with it, examined it, understood where it came from and why it exists. And instead of letting it consume them, they integrated it. They know their capacity for cruelty and choose restraint. They know their capacity for revenge and choose forgiveness. They know their capacity for closure and choose to remain open. Not because they're naive, because they've transcended naivety. They've seen the worst of humanity. They've experienced the worst of humanity, and they've made a conscious choice. They will not become it. Even when it would be easier, even when it would feel better, even when the world would understand. This is why people who've suffered deeply and remained kind are magnetic. There's a quality to them, a presence. You can feel it even if you can't name it. It's depth. Hard-won, pain-forged depth. The kind that can only come from descending into darkness and choosing to bring light back with you. This is the fifth sign, and if you recognize it in yourself, if you've been through hell and somehow kept your heart open, this message is for you. Your kindness is not weakness. Your silence is not defeat. Your solitude is not loneliness. You are not broken for choosing to heal instead of harm. You are not too sensitive for feeling everything deeply. You are not overthinking when you process the layers everyone else ignores. You are not cold for protecting yourself. You are not antisocial for preferring depth over noise. You are extraordinary, rare in a world that confuses cruelty with strength, that mistakes emotional unavailability for mystery, that glorifies surface-level connection over genuine intimacy. You are what the world needs more of, even if it doesn't know how to appreciate you yet. The gift in the isolation. So what does all of this mean? What does psychology actually say about people who enjoy being alone? It says they've discovered something most people never will, that solitude is not the absence of connection, it's the presence of self. Solitude is characterized by calm, comfort, and ease. It's sought for restoration and rejuvenation, fostering self-knowledge, creativity, and autonomy. They've learned that you can't truly connect with another person until you've connected with yourself. that every relationship is limited by your relationship with your own mind, that intimacy with others begins with intimacy with the self, and that work happens in silence, in the space between distractions, in the gap between performances, in the uncomfortable, terrifying, liberating void of being completely alone with your own consciousness. Most people avoid that void their entire lives. They fill every moment with noise, with people, with screens, with anything that prevents them from sitting in silence with nothing but their thoughts, because silence is where the lies die. All the stories you tell yourself, all the justifications for your behavior, all the blame you project onto others, all the ways you avoid responsibility for your own life. Silence strips it all away, and you're left with the raw truth. You are the author of your life, not your parents, not your circumstances, not the people who hurt you or the opportunities you missed. You, right now, in this moment, with the choices you're making, the thoughts you're thinking, the patterns you're perpetuating or breaking. People who seek solitude have faced that truth, and instead of running from it, they've embraced it. They've taken radical responsibility for their inner world. They've stopped waiting for external validation to feel whole. They've stopped expecting others to fill the void only they can fill. They've become self-sufficient, not in the toxic, I don't need anyone way. In the healthy, I'm complete within myself and can share that completeness with others way. This is what makes them so comfortable alone. Not that they don't value connection, they value it deeply. So deeply that they won't settle for anything less than genuine. Research shows that purposeful solitude provides an opportunity for self-reflection that leads to better emotional regulation skills and mental well-being. They'd rather be alone than pretend, rather be lonely than settle for shallow, rather be misunderstood than compromise their depth for approval. This is the gift in the isolation: clarity, the ability to hear your own voice above the noise, to know your own mind, to understand your own patterns, to develop the self-awareness that transforms you from a puppet of circumstance into a conscious creator of your life. And once you have that, you can't lose it. Jobs come and go. Relationships begin and end. Circumstances change. But the self you've discovered in solitude, the depth you've cultivated, the clarity you've earned, that's yours forever. No one can take it. No one can diminish it. No one can convince you to abandon it. Because you know yourself now. Not the performance. Not the mask. Not the version you present to the world. The real you, with all your contradictions, all your wounds, all your beauty and darkness and complexity. And knowing that, truly knowing it, changes everything. You stop seeking validation because you validate yourself. You stop fearing rejection because you accept yourself. You stop performing for approval because you approve of yourself. You become free. Free to be exactly who you are, to want what you want, to feel what you feel, to exist without apology or explanation. This is what people who enjoy being alone have found. Not loneliness, liberation, the freedom to exist fully, deeply, authentically, without needing anyone's permission, the courage to be strange, to be deep, to be intense, to be everything the world told them not to be, the wisdom to know that the right people will understand, and the ones who don't, they were never your people to begin with. The invitation. If you've made it this far, you already know. You recognize yourself in these words, in these patterns, in this portrait of souls who choose silence over noise, depth over surface, solitude over shallow connection. This is your confirmation. You are not broken for needing time alone. You are not antisocial for finding most social interaction exhausting. You are not too sensitive for feeling everything intensely. You are not cold for protecting your energy. You are awake. Awake in a world that's mostly sleepwalking, conscious in a culture that runs on autopilot, feeling deeply in a society that's gone numb. And yes, it's lonely sometimes. Not the solitude itself. The solitude is beautiful, necessary, nourishing. It's lonely because so few people understand. They see you sitting alone and think you're sad. You're not sad. You're processing, reflecting, integrating, doing the inner work most people avoid their entire lives. They see you quiet in groups and think you're awkward. You're not awkward. You're observing, listening, waiting for a conversation worth having instead of filling the void with meaningless chatter. They see your boundaries and think you're cold. You're not cold. You're careful, protective, discerning about where you invest your finite energy. They don't understand because they haven't done the work of sitting with yourself, of facing your shadow, of making peace with your mind, of developing the self-sufficiency that allows you to be alone without being lonely. And that's okay. You don't need them to understand. You only need to understand yourself, to know that your way of being, though different, though misunderstood, is not deficient. It's evolved. Intentionally chosen solitude has distinct outcomes from solitude engaged in by default. It's conducive rather than detrimental to psychological health. You've learned what takes most people a lifetime to discover, that the relationship with yourself is the foundation of everything else, that you can't love fully until you love yourself, can't connect deeply until you've connected with your own depths, can't be intimate with another until you've been intimate with your own soul. This is the invitation, not to isolate permanently, not to reject all connection, not to become a hermit who's given up on humanity, to reclaim your right to exist on your own terms, to stop apologizing for your need for solitude, to stop pretending you're more extroverted than you are, to stop forcing yourself into situations that drain you just to prove you're normal. You're not normal, thank God. Normal is unconscious. Normal is surface level. Normal is performing for approval and never questioning why you're exhausted all the time. You're different. You're deeper, more sensitive, more aware, more intense. And the world needs that. Not despite your solitude, because of it. Because the insights you gain in silence are the ones the world is desperate for. The depth you cultivate alone is the depth that transforms conversations from small talk into soul talk. The self-knowledge you develop in solitude is what allows you to see others clearly. You are not withdrawing from the world. You're preparing to engage with it more authentically, from a place of wholeness instead of neediness, from fullness instead of emptiness, from clarity instead of confusion. This is the path. Solitude, self-knowledge, integration, and then, when you're ready, when you've done the work, when you've become whole, connection. Real connection, deep connection, the kind that doesn't require you to perform or pretend or diminish yourself. The kind where you're seen fully and loved anyway, where your depth is welcomed, not feared, where your silence is understood, not judged, where your solitude is respected, not pathologized. Those connections exist, but you'll never find them by performing the version of yourself the world demands. You'll only find them by becoming so completely yourself that the right people recognize you immediately. And that becoming happens alone, in the silence, in the solitude, in the uncomfortable, beautiful, transformative space of being completely honest with yourself about who you are and what you need. So here's your permission. Choose yourself. Choose your peace. Choose your solitude. Without guilt, without apology, without explanation. You don't owe anyone access to your inner world. Your silence is sacred. Your depth is valuable. Your solitude is necessary. And you are exactly what the world needs, even if it doesn't know it yet. Before we finishing, remember that. In a world addicted to noise, your silence is not emptiness. It's the space where truth becomes possible, where depth replaces performance, where you finally meet the person you've been searching for all along, yourself.